Not at all. All right, so I got one card. Any other card? All set? Go. All right, so Stephanie, no pressure. Let it out. Yeah, let's
I apologize, I'm really nervous. So please just bear with me. Good afternoon, my name is Stephanie, and I'm here today to share a little bit about my son and our journey with autism and our experiences. I'm a mom of 3 crazy kids. I have 2 boys and a little girl. My youngest, his name is Eric. He has autism. I didn't expect autism. I knew something was off about 2 years old when he wasn't talking. He didn't really want to crawl. He was fine sitting. Once he learned to crawl, he didn't want to walk. He was fine doing his own thing. He never really played with brother and sister. Loved his cars. Fascinated. Sections of movies he couldn't get enough of, specifically SpongeBob. I was really worried when I took him to the pediatrician for his 2-year checkup because he really had 3 words. It was dad, no, and mom. That was it. At 2 years old, the pediatrician referred us to the regional center. Following the referral, a lady from Easter Seals came out and conducted an initial assessment, which included the Mullen Learning Scale and the MCHAT. It was the MCHAT results that said my son needed to be tested further by a psychologist for autism. That was the first time I'd ever heard the word autism. The problem was that I was told my son was at risk for autism, but I had no idea what that meant. I wasn't given really any information. I had no clue where to go from there. Due to the Mullen Learning Scale assessment, my son was deemed eligible for early start in OT because he had a 30% delay in a few developmental areas. Early start provided my son with 2 hours a week of play-based therapy, which mainly consisted of him playing next to the lady who came to our house, not with her. He's never been one to play with other kids, until recently actually. We couldn't access speech at that age because in Lake County they did not have a speech provider for under the age of 3. So the service that my pediatrician requested we weren't able to get right away. We had to wait until he turned 3 in November to be able to access the speech services. When he turned 3, he was able to get speech and OT provided to the school district, and Regional Center also asked us if we would be interested in intensive behavioral therapy. I decided no at the time, because that word intensive is really scary. When we went to the Regional Center for the diagnosis or the assessment for the diagnosis, it was in mid-June of 2015. That was the day, actually June 25th, was the day that my son was diagnosed with autism. That was the worst day of my life. The meeting was about 1 hour to 2 hours long, and I sat there and listened to the doctor point out all these different traits my son had that were similar to other people who had autism. Things that I thought were normal: running in circles, playing, not wanting to be open with other strangers, not wanting to look at other people. At the end of the meeting, the doctor looked at me and said, "It's not official, but I'm going to say your son has autism." And that was it. Thanks, have a great day. I got no information. I had no clue what to expect, where we were going to go from here, if my son would talk. I walked out of the regional center just devastated. I wondered what it all meant. What was autism? Will my son have a normal life? Will he talk? Will he be able to say I love you? Will he ride a bike or have friends? All those hopes and dreams died when I was told my son has autism. I remember feeling alone and crying the whole way home from Lakeport because I didn't know what we were going to have to deal with next. When I first told my husband what the doctor told me, he didn't believe it. He felt the doctor was overreacting and that our son was fine. It took a long time for my husband to accept and acknowledge that our son has autism, that he's not going to outgrow this. It was hard not being able to share my fears, my feelings with anybody. I was afraid to tell people my son had autism. I was afraid of being judged. I was afraid no one would understand what was going on with my boy. I mean, if we as a family couldn't figure it out, oops, how could the rest of the world figure it out? How would they be able to accept his behaviors and his actions if we couldn't figure it out ourselves? For a long time, I refused to let my husband or myself tell anybody about our son. I didn't want to be judged. I didn't tell people for two reasons. The first reason was to admit that something was wrong with my son. There's not, by the way, it's fine, but at that point in time, I didn't believe that. I thought that I had done something wrong, that it was my fault. Maybe I had come in contact with chemicals. My husband's a mechanic. We didn't know what had caused it. Still don't know. Secondly, the reason I was afraid to tell people about my son, I was scared of how they would react to the news. The two worst words I've ever been told after telling somebody my son has autism is "I'm sorry." Those are the worst words that I've ever been told. I don't want your pity. I don't want you to feel sorry for my son. He's amazing. He will blow your socks off with how smart and just funny and full of life he is. There's no need to be sorry. I hate those words. And I don't know if other parents feel that way, but I know I do. I don't want you to say, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." There's nothing to be sorry about. It's just he's different. His brain works different than my brain, than your brain, than your brain. And he's amazing. Standing up here is really hard for me because I don't like to be in the public eye. But I think that after my son's diagnosis and being so alone in that and not having somewhere to turn, not having an outlet, not knowing what autism is, not knowing other families or parents or anybody, I feel like I did something wrong because I had no one to tell me that it wasn't me, that I didn't do something wrong, that this just happened. I still feel today like I could have done something different while I was pregnant with my son. When Eric turned 3 in November 2015, the regional center asked us again if we wanted intensive behavioral therapy. Again, we said no. This is someone who'd be in my house 40 hours a week. That's a lot. I also have two other little kids who go to school. They have sports, they have drill team. Having someone come into your home, it seems kind of, I don't know, too much. Brian from AAI ended up calling me a few weeks later, and we made an appointment to meet. When meeting AAI for the first time, I thought it was going to be like all the other therapies. But my opinion changed. During the first visit, Brian was actually able to get my little boy to sit down and match colored popsicle sticks to matching bowls. He had never, ever been interested in colors, never been interested in doing any sort of sit-down activity lesson, ever. Brian was able to take my son's motivation and the things that he wanted to play with and work for and have fun with and get him to do this simple task. And it was amazing. That moment was when I changed my mind. This was a therapy that was going to help my son. He wasn't just playing next to another person or sitting in a classroom trying to repeat sound effects. He was actually doing things. The assessment process with AAI was good. It included direct testing and questions about my son's developmental skills. And once the assessment was done, I was given a copy. I am all about visuals. I love to be able to see progress. The assessment showed me where my son was supposed to be developmentally and where he was currently at in separate colors. It was easy to understand, and we had discussed the recommended goals. I personally thought Brian was reaching for the stars, not gonna happen, my son's not gonna do these things. Little did I know he was going to rocket past us. I honestly thought we were trying to reach unattainable goals that we'd never get to. 6 months after starting with AAI, they ran another assessment. Again, my son, I was given a colored graph showing where Eric was at and where he should be. And even better, the progress he made in that 6 months time frame. And that was a completely different color. I was able to see the progress that my son was making. That was my motivation. Having these people come into my house every day, well, 4 days a week, for multiple hours a day, this was my motivation. That's what I was working for. My son was progressing. He went from being non-vocal and non-verbal, not wanting to communicate, not paying attention, running around the house in circles, to he would sit down. He would sit at the table and eat with us. He would, I don't even know how to explain, just, there was something there. All of a sudden he knew we were listening for him. He knew we were going to try and help him. It wasn't like he had to continue screaming to get what he wanted. He knew we were trying. The longer we continued services, the more progress I see. My son started to learn his colors and his numbers, his letters, and he also utilized the PEC system, which Diane had talked about. My son picked up PECs very quickly. I couldn't see how it was going to work. How is this book of pictures going to help my son tell me, I'm hungry, I want juice, can we go outside? I didn't think it was going to work. Kind of thought it would be a joke, but it did. Within a few days of having the textbook, my son picked it up. He was asking for bubbles, juice, cereal. I was mind blown. I could not believe that this little boy who couldn't say a word, couldn't tell me, I had to decipher and guess and, pick and point and like charades. He was now able to tell me exactly what he wanted. There was a lot less meltdowns, a lot less fighting. My son and daughter, who are 6 and 11, he would use the PEC system with them, go up and hand him an icon, and they would be able to help him. So he's now not only communicating with me and his dad, but his brother and sister, which he had no interest in before. We tried sign language at one point, and he really could have cared less for it. The one sign we did get was more. I think that was because he liked Itsy Bitsy Spider personally, because that's the only sign he ever wanted. For Eric to have a voice and to tell me what he wanted was amazing. I wasn't sure he'd ever have a voice, but when he started exchanging icons, it was amazing. He now had an ability to tell me what he wanted. His vocals started slowly, and what he was doing is now what I know as echolalia. He wasn't necessarily telling me the words, he was just repeating back to me what I was saying to him, and he still does this, but it's become more functional. I also noticed that he uses sentences for movies now, and he likes me to go back and forth with the movies, so we have to script the movies back and forth. I remember when the regional center, we already did that one. Oh, there we go. I remember when the regional center asked me what I wanted for my son. The one thing I wanted most of all was to hear him say, I love you. I can remember the first time Eric told me he loved me. I tucked him into bed, and I said, I love you, buddy. I love you too. And I about died right there. It was the most incredible thing that I didn't think I'd ever get to hear. And that was my first reward. All the work that we had put in, all the struggles, all the fights, all the days where I go to bed crying and pulling my hair out, was worth it. Just to hear him say, I love you. And I make him say this every night, because that's one skill I refuse to let him lose. He will not lose that skill. He will tell me he loves me because that is important. And I make sure that he tells his brother, his sister, his dad. He's also working on Granny and Grandpa right now, but they're a little bit harder. I think the hardest part about having AAI come into my home was when Brian decided to tell me we needed to switch RBTs. We had fallen in love with Jessica. She was family. She is family. I hated Brian. I did. I was mad, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried, because Jessica had come in, and my son loved her. He took to her like flies on rice. Loved her. She got him to do things that he would look at you and be like, not happening, Mom. Not doing it. But he'd do it for Jessica. After having Brian explain to me why we had to take our famous, lovely, amazing woman away, I understood. My son had developed amazing skills. He had learned his learning to learn skills. He was able to progress and flourish, and we were reaching milestones that, personally, I thought we would never get to. So Brian switched our RBT when we got Natasha. And I love her just as much. Sorry. The reason we had, what? I'm getting there, just trying to calm down. We switched RBTs so that my son could learn that the skills that he had mastered, he could use as a generalization. That it wasn't just me or Jessica he needed to take instruction from. It would be his dad, his teachers, other adults or people in the community he could listen to. And he would be able to be like, oh, they just asked me to pick up my shoes. I need to pick up my shoes. That's why we generalized, or we switched, was to generalize. Even though we missed Jessica, Natasha's come in and she's done amazing with my son as well. I was mad and upset because you come to love these technicians that come into your house. They're there for you to see your child succeed and to celebrate those days. They're also there on the hard days when you don't think you can make it anymore. When the stress is too much and you don't think that there's another path you can take to get to where you need to be. These people come in and they give you that support. It was the first time in the entire process of my son having been diagnosed that I did not feel alone. These people came in and showed me that I'm not alone, that we're all in this together, whether our personal beliefs are the same or not. They're there to help with the successes, and they're there to pick you up when there's failure. They tell you there's no one direct path. You don't have to take point A to get to point B. We can hit point C and D and Z on the way there, but the point is we want to get there. It doesn't matter what path you take, it's just getting to that path that's important. When they told us that AAI provides intensive behavioral therapy, I think they need to change that. Because it starts off as intensive, but the more that you work and the more that you put into it, it stops becoming intensive and it starts becoming productive. I don't want a cure for my son. I don't think there needs to be one. What I want is for him to be able to function in society and be happy. I tried to explain to my friend the other day what applied behavioral analysis was, and it was really hard because it's a really big, fancy definition word. But the way I look at AA or ABA is it's an implement of systems. You develop your goals and you find out what motivates someone to engage in the learning process. It's not always easy to find what motivates somebody, but you try. Especially with street trial teaching, which is my absolute favorite. I love sit-down lessons where I know what we're doing. That's my favorite type of schooling. And that's what I feel like it is. ABA is like school for my son. He does go to preschool, he goes to the Head Start. But he's getting most of his academics through ABA. He's learning his numbers, his letters, his shapes, his colors. All of that is coming through ABA. So for me, it's not a therapy anymore, it's like school. You get up every day, you take your kids to school. I do the same thing with my son. We get up every day and we do ABA. And it's amazing to see the results that we're getting. We've had AAI for a little over a year now. My son went from being nonverbal, non-vocal, not really wanting to be in with anybody, no playing with people, no answering, no looking. I don't even know how many words because I stopped counting. He plays with his brother and sister. One of the biggest things that I was afraid of when they told me Eric had autism was he would never have friends. A few weeks ago, a mom from my son's school came up to me and told me that her little boy told her my son is her son's best friend. I cried. Because as a parent, all the dreams that I thought I had for my son, marriage, college, friends, bicycles, they died. But slowly through this process, I've learned that there is hope. All those dreams that I had for my son didn't die. Changed slightly, but they didn't die. My son still will be able to get married. He'll still be able to go to college. He'll be able to do anything he wants to do because I refuse to give up and not fight for him. I don't want parents to feel alone. That's why I'm standing up here today. I personally started my journey alone. My husband didn't understand. He didn't want to hear about it. My family still doesn't want to hear about it. But I'm here today because I want other parents to know that they're not alone. That through every struggle and every hard day, there will be good days. And no matter what, we're always here for each other. That's it. Thank you.